For centuries, you've probably heard one story about how Rome fell. It's a tale of savage hordes, unstoppable invasions, and an empire brought to its knees by outside forces. We all have these images in our heads: barbarians tearing down the gates, flames engulfing the eternal city, civilization itself collapsing under the weight of brute force. But what if I told you that story is mostly a myth? The barbarian invasions weren't the cause of Rome's death. They were more like the final symptom of a disease that had been rotting the empire from within. Many historians argue that a fatal blow wasn't struck by a barbarian king in the heat of battle, but was ordered by a Roman emperor in a palace with the stroke of a pen. This is the story of how the Roman Empire, through a stunning act of self-sabotage, executed its most brilliant defender. This is the story of how one man's death didn't just cause a crisis, but unleashed the end of the ancient world as they knew it. Number 1. The dying giant and the unlikely savior. By the late 4th century, the Roman Empire was a shadow of its glorious past. It was a fractured, paranoid, and overstretched giant, bleeding from 1,000 cuts. The empire had been split in two, east and west, each with its own emperor and its own bitter rivalries. Barbarian tribes pressed in on every border, while usurpers and civil wars shattered any hope of stability. The idea of a single invincible Rome was fading fast. Into this chaos stepped a man named Flavius Stilicho, and to the Roman elite, he was completely the wrong man for the job. Why? He was the son of a Vandal, a Germanic warrior who had served in the Roman army. To the blue-blooded senators and scheming courtiers in Ravenna, his barbarian blood was a permanent stain, the mark of an outsider. But Stilicho was more Roman than any of them. He was a brilliant strategist, a fierce warrior, and above all, ruthlessly loyal to the throne. His skill was so undeniable that he flew through the ranks, eventually marrying Serena, the favorite niece of the powerful Emperor Theodosius the Great. When Theodosius died in 395 CE, he left the crumbling Western Empire to his 10-year-old son Honorius. And he left Honorius in the care of just one man, Stilicho. As regent and commander-in-chief, Stilicho became the de facto ruler of the West, the sole guardian of a child emperor and a collapsing world. Number 2. The firefighter of the empire. For the next 13 years, Stilicho wasn't so much a general as he was a firefighter, racing from one crisis to the next, almost single-handedly holding the empire together. His main rival was Alaric, king of the Visigoths, a cunning and relentless adversary who would become his nemesis. In 402 CE, Alaric and his Goths stormed into Italy for the first time, striking terror into the heart of the empire. While the young emperor Honorius cowered in his capital, Stilicho acted. He gathered troops from the frontiers, marched to face the invaders, and at the Battle of Pollentia, he smashed the Gothic army. Though Alaric himself escaped, Stilicho had saved Italy. The very next year, Alaric tried again, and at the Battle of Verona, Stilicho beat him again. But the threats were endless. While Stilicho was busy with Alaric, a massive horde of Ostrogoths and other tribes under a chieftain named Radagaisus swept down from the north in 406 CE. They besieged Florence, and it seemed nothing could stop them. Once again, Stilicho assembled his legions, surrounded the invaders, and utterly annihilated them. He was one of Rome's last great defenders, an immovable object against an unstoppable barbarian tide. But his victories were legendary, and they came at a cost he never could have seen coming. Because in the viper's nest of the Roman court, success breeds a very special kind of poison: jealousy. Number 3. The seeds of betrayal. With every victory, Stilicho's power grew. And with every victory, the whispers against him grew louder. In the imperial capital of Ravenna, far from the front lines, a cabal of court officials watched him with fear and suspicion. They saw a man who was too successful, too powerful, and in their eyes, too barbarian. His Vandal blood was the perfect weapon for his enemies. They spread rumors that he was secretly plotting with his old enemy Alaric, even claiming he let the Goth escape on purpose. They whispered in the ear of the weak-willed Emperor Honorius that his guardian, the man who had protected him his entire life, was a traitor who wanted the throne for his own son. The chief conspirator was a high-ranking official named Olympius. He saw a path to power, and it ran right over Stilicho's grave. Olympius expertly manipulated Honorius, playing on the emperor's insecurities and his prejudice against Stilicho's Germanic heritage. The situation was a powder keg. Stilicho, juggling multiple crises, had to make tough choices. He even convinced the Senate to pay Alaric a huge sum of gold to buy his services as an ally against other threats. A deeply unpopular move his enemies painted not as pragmatism but as treason. It was the final piece of evidence they needed to seal his fate. If you're fascinated by this look into the real, messy politics behind the fall of Rome, do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. We're all about uncovering the hidden stories that textbooks usually leave out. Number 4. The fatal mistake. In the summer of 408 CE, the conspiracy reached its boiling point. While Stilicho was away, Olympius staged a coup. He convinced the troops at a garrison in Ticinum that their general was a traitor. Fueled by paranoia and anti-barbarian sentiment, the soldiers mutinied, slaughtering many of Stilicho's most loyal officials. When the news reached Stilicho, he faced a terrible choice. His remaining barbarian troops were enraged and begged him to lead them in a civil war against the emperor. They were ready to fight and die for him, but Stilicho refused. He was a Roman general, and he would not be the one to march on Rome and plunge the empire into another self-destructive conflict. Hoping to clear his name, he went to Ravenna, but there was no trial, no justice. Emperor Honorius, now completely under Olympius's influence, had already signed the death warrant. On August 22, 408, Flavius Stilicho, master general of the Roman army, was arrested and executed without resistance. He calmly submitted his neck to the sword, choosing to die a loyal Roman rather than live as a rebel. It was a catastrophic, empire-altering mistake. Honorius and his court, in a fit of paranoid delusion, had just murdered their only competent protector. The walls of the West were no longer defended by Stilicho's genius, and the storm that had been gathering for years was about to break. Number 5. The floodgates open. The consequences of Stilicho's execution were immediate and apocalyptic. The anti-barbarian hysteria whipped up by Olympius exploded. Across Italy, the families of the barbarian soldiers, the foederati who had served loyally in Stilicho's army, were hunted down and massacred by Roman mobs. In response, tens of thousands of these enraged and betrayed soldiers, with some estimates as high as 30,000, defected. They flocked to the one man they knew could lead them to vengeance, Alaric the Goth. His army, instantly swollen with battle-hardened veterans who knew every Roman tactic and weakness, was now an overwhelming force, and there was no Stilicho to stop him. Alaric marched into Italy, and this time, there were no brilliant maneuvers or last-ditch defenses. The Roman army, now leaderless and in chaos, simply melted away. Within 2 years, in 410 CE, Alaric and his Visigoths stood before the gates of Rome itself. For the first time in 800 years, the Eternal City was sacked by a foreign invader. The psychological shock was immense. The symbolic heart of the empire had been violated, not because of some unstoppable force, but because Rome's own leadership had decapitated its defenses just moments before the final assault. The power vacuum left by Stilicho's death proved to be a critical blow, paving the way for decades of further decline and the eventual end of the Western Roman Empire in 476 CE. So who really crumbled the Western Roman Empire? The fall of Rome was a long and complex process with many causes, from economic and political instability to climate change and disease. The barbarians at the gates were a real threat, but the story of Stilicho shows us that the fatal blow often comes from within. It came from paranoid whispers in the imperial court, from the xenophobia of a decaying elite, and from the weakness of an emperor who was convinced to murder the one man who could have saved him. Stilicho's execution wasn't just a political blunder. It was an act of imperial self-sabotage that directly led to the catastrophic sack of Rome 2 years later. The empire had essentially murdered its own immune system and then feigned shock when the disease finally overran it. The story of Stilicho is the ultimate proof that empires don't just fall to outside enemies. They often rot from the head down. And that leaves us with a final, tragic question. Was Stilicho's unwavering loyalty to a corrupt and ungrateful empire his greatest strength, or his fatal flaw? Let me know what you think in the comments below.